how prevalent is glyphosate in our food ecosystem, and what are the common foods we are looking at, rather, which contains glyphosate?
That's a good question. I can only speak for the United States because I'm not sure. I know you guys have a lot of cotton, I think, in India, and cotton is actually a source of cottonseed oil. It's not considered a food crop, but the cottonseed oil probably has a lot of glyphosate. The cotton is sprayed routinely with glyphosate, and that I think is a problem. It's a GMO Roundup Ready crop, and but it's not just the GMO crops. A lot of people think if I see a non-GMO label, it's safe. I can eat it. I won't have glyphosate, and that's not true at all. Actually, some of the highest levels are found in crops that are non-GMO, and this includes, for example, wheat and barley and rye and oats. So oatmeal and oat cereals for the children, oat milk, they're all going to have glyphosate. And then also garbanzo beans, chickpeas. So Indians eat a lot of beans. Actually, I heard something about Canada selling beans to India, and India actually becoming aware that the Canadian beans would be contaminated with glyphosate. And I think they issued, maybe some counties in India or something issued a ban on Canadian imports of, do you know anything about that? I don't maybe have it exactly right, but there was something a few years back that I heard about India restricting imports of Canadian legumes, so lentils and chickpeas and garbanzo beans, which are, I think, pretty common in Indian food. You really need to eat those as certified organic because they have some of the highest levels. Canada did a big test of over 8,000 different food samples and then they published a book. My friend Tony Mitra, who pressured them to do this test, published a book called Poison Foods of North America, where he detailed the results of the Canadian study. And he showed that these garbanzo beans and chickpeas had sky-high levels of glyphosate in them because they're sprayed right before harvest as a desiccant. So they're not GMO. The glyphosate actually kills the crop, which is the intent because it's ready to be harvested. And they basically synchronize so everything goes to seed at the same time. They increase the yield. They also can get a head start on the weeds for next year's crop. And they can often beat the frost because in Canada it's cold. You could have a cold air come in and kill the crop. So they want to harvest it before it gets cold.
Right. From what I know, in India, it's commonly used with wheat, maize, corn. Basically, that sort of GMO crops is where you use glyphosate the most.
Right.
And interestingly, you mentioned oatmeal. I think oats is something we in India we see it like everywhere practically. We see it as something that is super healthy, right? And if there is this threat of glyphosate, then we are practically doing slow suicide.
Right. I'm worried in here because many kids are allergic to, they have casein intolerance. They can't eat milk products. They can't drink milk. And then we have a big supply of oat milk lately that I've been seeing oat milk as a substitute for milk because of sensitivities to milk, which I think is due to glyphosate. So if the glyphosate causes you to be sensitive to milk, and then you go on a dairy-free diet and you switch to oat milk, which has even more glyphosate in it than the original milk, which just makes your situation worse. So, and the same thing with the garbanzo beans and the chickpeas. If you're trying to avoid wheat, gluten intolerance is a huge problem in our country today. Many people are avoiding wheat-based products. That, again, I think is directly caused by the glyphosate in the wheat. And so then they switch to beans, and the beans are loaded with glyphosate. So it's kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire because you end up with even more glyphosate exposure once you get rid of those foods that you can't eat because glyphosate has made it intolerable for you to digest them.
Interestingly, we have come across situations where some of our clients have wheat products from India. They feel terrible. They go to Europe. They don't feel so much. They go to US. They feel terrible again. So
yes, there you
what
go.
we perceive as, say, gluten intolerance and all that is possibly a glyphosate issue.
I think I'm very confident that it is. It makes a lot of sense to me. The glyphosate is the primary cause because before glyphosate, we didn't have gluten intolerance. It was very rare. And in fact, I've written a paper on that where I show that the use of glyphosate on
Right.
wheat, it went up over time and matched well with the increase in celiac disease.